Let's talk about this with Peter Bleksley, former Scotland Yard detective and himself a former armed officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Look, we did see, the Army put on standby earlier in the week because we just simply haven't got enough officers willing to be armed on shift on any given day. They were then stood down. Other police forces have said they would help. So Mark Rowley, the Met Chief yesterday, though, speaking at an event in London, was saying how, we don't have the normal number of armed officers, and how a lot of these officers are saying it's their families saying, we don't want you to have this responsibility, because if you shoot someone in the course of work because you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're going to face prosecution. The family can't cope with it. It's not worth it. You're not paid any extra for this duty. Don't do it. I mean, you've been quite unsympathetic to that. We spoke about it earlier. But what about the specific issue of this police officer facing losing his anonymity ahead of this trial?
Well, there have been precedents set before where officers have enjoyed anonymity up until the point when they've walked into the dock. And it will, of course, rest with the judge as to whether this officer is allowed to remain anonymous throughout the trial, or whether they will have to be named. We'll just have to wait and see how that pans out. But may I just say, this story has an awful long way to run. And if you'll let me just for a moment release a statement that was published last night by a man called Mark Williams, who is the CEO of the Police Firearms Officers Association. And he said, "I am saddened tonight to have received several emails from firearms officers from various forces who have been bullied, intimidated, and given ultimatums about their careers because they have suspended their firearms authorisations to consider their position and discuss the issue with their families after recent events." So the disquiet continues. Allegations of bullying against senior officers have clearly been made in that statement. And the bottom line is, with not sufficient police officers armed on the streets of London in particular, that is a concern for every man, woman and child of London.
Yeah, and indeed of the country, because, they're often then sent to help in other jurisdictions. Look, the reality is we have been quite a few times in recent years, certainly since we've been on air here at TalkTV, where, we've got arms response units, these vans, when there's a high terror alert or something's happened, these people, men and women, they're in that van, they're ready to go, all that kit, they're often sitting there for hours and hours and then they are dispatched within minutes, and they turn up somewhere and they deal with these threats, great risk to themselves, and basically, kill people who would otherwise kill us or kill more people. We need those people to be available, and if they feel that if we do our jobs directly as we are instructed to do, according to our training, we could face years of investigations, going to court and possibly even going behind bars. I mean, I've got to be honest, if my husband was a police officer, an armed officer right now, I'd have said to him, not a chance. You need to hand your weapon back. This is crazy.
Well, let's look at an incident from not so long ago that happened on London Bridge, just a mere stone's throw from where your studio is, when courageous armed police officers stopped further bloodshed by shooting a man dead on that bridge. And rightfully so. Their actions were judged, they were held accountable, and resoundingly people agreed with what they did. Here, clearly in the Kaba case that I'm not going to major upon, but it has been decided that there is evidence to charge this officer. We will have to see how the wheels of justice turn. I do have sympathy for armed officers. I did have that gun oil under my fingernails, albeit a long time ago. I faced murderers on the streets of London with a gun in my hand. Yes, they need to be held accountable. Of course they do. But investigations and decisions to charge should be swift, professional, effective. They shouldn't be hanging over officers' heads for months, if not years. And that system very much needs to be sorted out.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter Bleksley, so appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. It's always good to get your thoughts on these issues.